Dopamine, the chemistry behind your spending habits. Chapter 1. Why does it matter? Did you know that every time you buy something new, your brain rewards you with a dose of chemical happiness? That's dopamine in action. But does it really make you happier or just more impulsive? Imagine that feeling of opening a new package, as if the world feels momentarily better. Now think about how often that same feeling disappears as quickly as it came. Science explains. It's dopamine that controls this cycle of pleasure and frustration. What was the last purchase that made you feel like this? Let us know in the comments. Was it something you really needed, or just an impulse buy? Let's talk about something that happens every day and often we don't even notice. Dopamine, the pleasure chemical, is what drives much of our purchasing decisions. Think about that instant joy when buying something new, like sneakers, or that gadget you've been eyeing for weeks. Behind that feeling, it's not just your willpower at work. It's your brain acting almost like an internal salesperson, convincing you that the item will change your life. But does it really? Or are we just being deceived by our own reward system? The truth is, dopamine's effect is shorter than we imagine. It makes us feel good in the moment, but rarely leaves us happier in the long run. This puts us in an addictive cycle of wanting to buy more and more to recover that sensation. This chemical may be draining your bank account without you even realizing it. But don't worry. Today we'll show you how to recognize and break this cycle. Have you ever stopped to think about how many times you bought something that seemed incredible at the moment, but ended up regretting it later? Why does this happen? Is the problem in the things we buy, or in the way our brain makes us believe we need them? In today's video, you'll learn exactly how this works. Get ready to discover. What is dopamine? And why does it control so much of our purchasing decisions? What tricks does it use to convince us? And most importantly, how can we control this powerful chemical and make smarter, more conscious choices? If you're tired of overspending or falling into the trap of impulsive buying, stick around until the end of this video. Not only will you understand your brain, but you'll also learn how to use it to your advantage. Chapter 2. How dopamine drives our desires. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter, a chemical molecule your brain uses to send messages. But not just any message, it's tied to feelings of reward and motivation. When you do something pleasurable like eating chocolate, listening to your favorite song, or buying something new, your brain releases dopamine. It makes you feel good instantly, almost like a tiny burst of happiness. That's why dopamine is called the pleasure chemical. But there's more. Dopamine also motivates us to repeat behaviors that generate this sensation. And this is where consumption comes into play. When you're about to buy something, say, that dream phone you've been eyeing, dopamine is already acting before you even complete the purchase. It creates anticipation, a sense of expected pleasure, that pushes you to make the decision. And when you finally make the purchase, boom, dopamine is released, and you feel that relief or satisfaction. But here's the trick. Dopamine isn't about having, it's about wanting. In other words, most of the pleasure comes from the anticipation, not necessarily from the purchased item. That's why the thrill often fades right after the purchase. Let's illustrate this with an example. Imagine you're browsing a website and see a promotion for a product you've always wanted. Your heart races, and you feel a flutter of excitement. That's dopamine saying, buy it now, you'll feel amazing. But a few days later, when the product arrives, it doesn't seem so magical, does it? This happens because dopamine has already done its job. The pleasure was in the anticipation, not in the item itself. It's like a party that ends too quickly. This phenomenon creates a cycle. You buy something, experience a dopamine spike, and once the sensation passes, you want to repeat it to feel that pleasure again. This cycle is called the reward loop. It's the same principle that keeps people playing video games or endlessly scrolling through social media. And guess what? Marketing knows this cycle very well. That's why they create strategies to activate your dopamine, like flash sales or emotional triggers, encouraging you to consume without thinking. And the more you repeat it, the more your brain reinforces this behavior. Chapter 3. Did you know? Did you know that the price of $99.99 isn't just a marketing strategy? It directly activates your dopamine system. When you see a price that looks lower or more advantageous, Your brain interprets it as an irresistible opportunity for reward. That's why promotions like Buy Now and Save work so well. They're not just selling the product, they're also selling the instant pleasure it promises. And often, you buy without even realizing you've fallen for the trick. Here's another curious fact. Touching a product, even for just a few seconds, can drastically increase the likelihood that you'll buy it. Studies show that touch creates a sense of ownership, activating dopamine in your brain. This even applies to online shopping. Buttons like View Product in 3D or Click to Try It On were designed precisely to simulate this touch experience, increasing your chances of making the purchase. Fascinating, isn't it? And here's one more. Do you know those countdown timers on flash sales? They're not just there to grab your attention. The fear of missing out triggers a dopamine spike, which makes us act quickly without thinking too much. This strategy is called the urgency trigger. Your brain interprets the limited time as a threat to your reward and sends the command, buy now, or you'll lose it. It's one of the oldest and most effective tricks in marketing. After hearing these curiosities, tell me, which of them has influenced you? Have you ever bought something just because it seemed like an unmissable opportunity? Or felt that irresistible urge after touching a product? Share your experience in the comments, because I want to know, how is dopamine controlling your decisions? And stay tuned, because in the next chapter, we'll explore how emotions and psychological triggers make this effect even more powerful. Chapter 4. Why do we do this? Purchases when we're emotional? This isn't a coincidence. Emotions like joy, sadness, or even boredom increase the release of dopamine in the brain. It's as if the emotions are saying, you deserve this right now. For example, during stressful moments, buying something might feel like an immediate reward, almost like a chemical hug from the brain. But the problem is that most of the time, this sensation doesn't last long, and the cycle begins again. Marketing knows this dynamic well and creates strategies to catch you at your most vulnerable moments. Let's imagine a common situation. You're at home, scrolling through your social media feed, and an ad pops up saying, buy now and transform your life. It shows someone smiling, relaxed, holding the exact product you were thinking of buying. This isn't a coincidence. This kind of marketing uses visual emotional triggers to activate dopamine and create a connection between the product and your well-being. You're not just buying an item, you're buying the promise of happiness. And the funny thing is, even knowing this, we're still influenced. When we're emotional, our brain enters a state that scientists call present bias. This means we ignore future consequences and focus only on immediate pleasure. That's why you might end up buying something expensive, even knowing you'll regret it later. Intense emotions, especially joy or anxiety, heighten this sense of urgency. In short, it's like your brain is saying, forget tomorrow, enjoy now. And this trap doesn't just affect impulsive shoppers. We're all subject to these distortions, especially when strong emotions are involved. Now tell me, have you ever bought something impulsively, just because you were happy or even stressed? And how did you feel afterward? Share your experience in the comments, because in the next chapter, we'll show real-life examples of how these emotions affect consumption. Who knows? Maybe your story will help others better understand the impact of emotions on financial decisions. Chapter 5. This happens in real life. Friday night, tired, you gave in to that irresistible online deal? Check out these stories. Anna's story. Ana Martinez, 28, had an especially rough day at work. Walking home, something caught her attention. A brightly lit storefront with a mannequin showcasing a stunning dress, and a sign that read last pieces, 20% off. Without hesitation, she stepped inside. The cozy shop, with its wooden floors, colorful racks, and soft music in the background, seemed to invite her to leave her worries behind. As she touched the fabric of the dress, she felt its softness, promising not just physical comfort but emotional relief. A small escape from her draining day. In the fitting room, Anna admired her reflection in the mirror. For a moment, she felt renewed, happy, as if the dress was a symbol of a better day ahead. With a wide smile, she handed her credit card to the cashier. Moments later, she left the store holding a shopping bag and radiating satisfaction, already imagining how perfect it looked on her. But when she got home, the euphoria gave way to introspection. Sitting on the couch with the dress beside her, Anna realized she didn't even have an occasion to wear it. That fleeting moment of happiness seemed to be just another reflection of her emotionally exhausting day. Anna didn't buy a dress, she bought a moment of relief. Carlos's story. Carlos Ramirez, an avid collector of miniature figurines, had a similar experience. On that same Friday night, as he browsed his computer, a deal caught his eye: free shipping for a limited time. It was the perfect chance to snag a few figurines he'd admired for a while. His eyes lit up as he clicked the checkout button. When the purchase was finalized, Carlos felt euphoric. But a few days later, when the package arrived and he unwrapped his new figurines, his excitement started to fade. Looking around at his already overcrowded shelves, he realized there was no space to display them. Sitting at his desk with the figurines in hand, the initial satisfaction turned into a mix of chaos around him and a touch of regret. Like Anna, Carlos didn't buy objects. He sought the promise of a fleeting moment of happiness, which quickly faded. Why do we do this? Marketing knows exactly how to exploit our need for instant emotional relief. Words like last pieces or free shipping for a limited time trigger urgency, creating a sense of immediate reward. But that feeling is fleeting. This is what we call a short reward. A burst of pleasure that fades quickly, often leaving regret behind. Now I want to ask you, what's the most impulsive purchase you've ever made? Did it bring lasting happiness? Or is it gathering dust in the back of a drawer? Share your story in the comments. Your experience could help others realize they're not alone. And stay tuned. Next time, we'll uncover the hidden triggers that shape our decisions and how to break free from them. Chapter 6. What you don't notice. Have you ever seen an ad saying, "Only 2 units left," or "limited time offer"? That's scarcity bias, one of the most powerful tools used in marketing. When we see something as rare or limited, our brain sends out an urgency alert, activating even more dopamine. It's like we're in a race against time, afraid of missing out on a unique opportunity. The problem is, this scarcity is often fabricated, a strategy designed just to make us act quickly, without thinking twice. Another invisible trick is the anchoring effect. Imagine you walk into a store and see 2 pairs of shoes. One costs $500, and the other $300. Which seems like the better deal? The $300 one, right? But what if the $500 pair was only there to make you think the $300 one is a bargain? That's anchoring. The higher price creates a reference point that distorts our perception of value. Even if the $300 pair is still expensive, it seems cheap by comparison. And guess what? This also activates dopamine, because we feel like we're saving money. Have you noticed that stores use relaxing music, pleasant aromas, or special lighting? That's sensory marketing, another strategy that directly targets your emotions and, of course, your dopamine. One study showed that the smell of coffee in a cafe can increase the likelihood of you buying a pastry. How does this work? These stimuli create positive associations with the environment, making you more inclined to consume. It's like the setting is saying, stay, relax, and why not buy something to complete the experience? Now that you know these strategies, I want to ask, which one do you think affects your purchases the most? Scarcity bias, anchoring effect, or sensory marketing? Let us know in the comments, and share how these traps have influenced you before. In the next chapter, we'll show you how to turn this knowledge into practical actions, so you can take control of your financial decisions. Chapter 7. What can you do? The first strategy is to identify the triggers that make you spend. When you see a promotion or get a notification about a deal, stop and ask yourself, do I really need this right now? The simple act of pausing helps your brain exit autopilot mode and regain control. Remember, if there's a countdown or a sense of urgency, it's likely you're being manipulated by scarcity bias. Take a deep breath, and don't let dopamine make the decision for you. Another powerful solution is to create barriers before buying. For example, add items to your cart, but wait 24 hours before finalizing the purchase. This small delay reduces impulsiveness because the dopamine linked to anticipation diminishes over time. Additionally, turn off notifications from shopping apps and avoid browsing online stores when you're emotionally vulnerable, like after a tough day. The harder it is to complete the process, the less likely you are to make an impulsive purchase. Set clear financial goals and use these goals as a filter for your purchases. Want to save for a trip or a major investment? Before buying anything, ask yourself, does this bring me closer to or farther from my goal? Financial planning not only reduces impulsive spending, but also gives your decisions a greater purpose. Over time, you'll find that the satisfaction of achieving your goals lasts much longer than the fleeting pleasure of an impulsive purchase. Which of these strategies do you think will help you most in your daily life? Recognizing triggers, creating barriers, or reinforcing planning? Vote in the comments and share a tip that already works for you. Remember, every small change can make a big difference in your finances. And in the next chapter, we'll explore even more reflective scenarios, inviting you to rethink your relationship with consumption. Chapter 8. What if it were different? Now pause for a moment and think. If you could go back in time, which purchases would you undo? Maybe something that only took up space or lost its charm after a few days. How would your life look today if you had saved that money? Imagine investing in something that truly matters to you. Often, our impulsive choices pull us away from what we really want, and we only realize this after the dopamine rush fades. Let me tell you Joao's story. He was a tech enthusiast, and every time he saw a new gadget, he bought it immediately. Within a few years, his house was filled with devices he barely used. It wasn't until he reviewed his finances that he realized he had spent the equivalent of a trip abroad he had always dreamed of taking. Joao started to reflect. Each of those purchases seemed small, but together, they cost him something he valued far more. This realization changed the way he consumed. What if you could escape the cycle of impulsive spending? Imagine achieving dreams with saved money, a trip, a course, or an emergency fund. It's not about never spending, but investing in what truly matters. What's your first step today? Saying no to an impulsive buy, setting a financial goal, or reflecting before purchasing? Share in the comments and inspire others to start their transformation. Chapter 9. Let's practice. Now it's your turn. Let's put everything we've discussed into practice with a simple but powerful challenge. Over the next week, every time you think about buying something, follow this step-by-step guide. First, ask yourself, do I really need this? Or am I buying on impulse? Then, wait 24 hours before finalizing the purchase. Finally, write down how you felt. Did the purchase still seem essential, or was it just a reaction to the moment? This small exercise can completely change the way you consume. Let's imagine this in practice. Maria, a viewer like you, saw sneakers on sale. Before buying, she followed the challenge's steps. She waited 24 hours, reflected on whether she truly needed the sneakers, and decided that her old pair was still in good condition. The result? She saved money and felt in control of her situation. Now think about the impact this exercise could have on all your purchases, big or small. Small changes create big results. Did you know this simple habit could transform your spending? By pausing, reflecting, and tracking your decisions, you unlock clarity and control over your finances. Small steps lead to significant changes. What's your first move? Share in the comments, inspire others, and join us next week for more insights to strengthen your financial journey. Let's grow together. Chapter 10. It's up to you. Today, you learned how dopamine influences your spending decisions, creating that momentary pleasure that doesn't always lead to lasting happiness. We also uncovered the invisible marketing strategies, like scarcity, anchoring, and emotional triggers, that make us buy without thinking. And most importantly, we talked about how to take control with simple practices, like pausing before buying and setting financial goals. Small steps, big changes. But remember, true transformation starts with action. It doesn't matter if you're taking the first step today or fine-tuning habits you've already been working on. What matters is being mindful and committed to making better choices. Choices that reflect what truly matters to you. When you learn to use dopamine to your advantage, you can transform your relationship with money and achieve goals that once seemed out of reach. Now I want to know, what was the most impactful takeaway from this video for you? Was it understanding how dopamine works, recognizing marketing strategies, or discovering that small actions can lead to big changes? Write it in the comments, because your ideas can inspire others to take their first steps. Your voice matters, and your transformation could be the start of something bigger. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. There's much more to come, with tips and strategies to help you take control of your finances and live more consciously. Share this video with friends or family who also need to understand the chemistry behind consumption. Let's spread this change and build a community of conscious consumers. See you in the next video.